Welcome back once again to Queer Gals Watch the West Wing. How are we, Leigh? How are we doing?
There's so much going on. We have a festive hangover. We drank quite a lot of red wine, ate quite a lot of cheese yesterday. And now we're going into one of the, I'm going to say the most upsetting episode of the West Wing thus far.
Truly agreed.
Artistry all round.
Unbelievable episode. Unbelievable. Stunning acting, but heavy. For a Christmas ep. For a Christmas ep.
So dark.
So dark. So yes, we are here to discuss season 2, episode 10 of The West Wing, Noël. I was like, Noël, the bells will be ringing, the decorations will be up. I'm here, I'm ready for a bit of Christmas cheer. Hopefully CJ will sing again. No.
I was really readying myself for like a fun, festive romp of an episode, which is kind of what I needed emotionally and spiritually. And what was given to me was deeply moving and powerful and quite deeply upsetting.
Yeah, so we're just going to top this episode with a trigger warning that this particular episode of The West Wing does discuss in detail mental health and also suicide. So we're just popping that out there for you guys at the top. Yeah. And Leigh, shall I crack on with this episode recap?
Let's get into it.
Because
I can hardly bear it.
I'd really love for us to just throw some amazing compliments Bradley's way, because Bradley arrived to work this week.
Bradley Whitford
He read his script.
Himself.
He did his prep.
Outdid himself.
So, the previously on, nothing says Merry Christmas, Leigh, like flashing back to when someone was suffering from a life-threatening gunshot wound.
Yeah, the previously on, I was already like, oh no.
Oh, it looks like, yep, okay, we're going to go back to the top of the season and just Josh bleeding out on the concrete. Great. And so we open episode 10, Noël, in Dr. Keyworth's office.
I'm a fan of Dr. Keyworth, I must say.
Dr. Stanley Keyworth, unmatched writing on this character. So Josh walks in. This is a therapy moment for him.
Mm-hmm. Which we've seen him in therapy before.
For sure, and has great relationship with his therapist.
Yeah.
Seems very chilled, very happy to be in talking therapy. Not the energy we're getting here.
No, but I suppose this is kind of enforced. So it's a slightly different vibe.
He is being incredibly rude to this doctor and the medical student who sat in on this session. I will say, I mean, it is kind of tough to have someone be like, by the way, this is so-and-so, they're going to be sat in on this.
We've all had that at a pap smear.
I had it when I was having my colonoscopy, Leigh.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah.
Also, just like some lore about me. If you've seen any of Leigh's stand-up, she talks in detail about my colonoscopy, which I did give her permission to do. But yes, I was supposed to be under anesthesia, and then I couldn't be, so I had to be awake during my colonoscopy, and there was like 4 medical students and the doctor doing the procedure, just like talking them through every stage and discussing my intestines. Look, hey, people gotta learn. But enough about my GI tract. Let's really get back to the business at hand, which is the American Trauma Association is who Josh is meeting with. So they're like a government-funded organization that basically gets sent to treat individuals who have been involved in like significant traumatic events, like large-scale accidents. I think there was reference to them being involved with response to like a public shooting.
Mm-hmm.
So they've got skin in the game here.
Yeah.
But absolutely no reason for Josh to show them any sort of respect. To quote Dr. Keyworth, I'm the Deputy White House Chief of Staff. I oversee 1,100 White House employees. I answer directly to Leo McGarry, the President of the United States. Did you think you were talking to the paper boy? Get a grip.
I just love that when Josh clearly is feeling like a little bit threatened and a little bit vulnerable, whereas obviously as an Irish woman, my kind of default would be to like apologize for my existence and be like, oh, I'm oh God, there's such a fuss being, I'm wasting everyone's time. I'm such a fuss. Oh God, Aisha, I'm grand. You know, like that would very much be me. Whereas clearly his default status when feeling vulnerable is just pure ego.
And toxic masculinity. Yeah. What I love about Dr. Stanley Keyworth is that he does not rise to this and will have none of it.
He's so unthreatened by Josh. It is unreal.
At no point does he flap.
No.
He is unflappable.
He is, I'm going to say, the most physically still character we've had in the whole show. And it's so powerful. I think it gives him such status in the scene.
And the gang, they're like real like shufflers. Everyone's always moving around, you know? So to have a character with such stillness, chef's kiss. As Dr. Keyworth says, you're not talking to the paperboy either, Josh.
I'm simply dead. Josh Lyman has met his match.
This is all happening, by the way, on Christmas Eve.
Which is crazy.
Josh is like, his hand is all bandaged up. Dr. Keyworth's like, what happened to your hand? Josh is like, I smashed a glass. And I'm like, okay.
It's real fireworks with Josh on Christmas Eve from moment one. Moment one of this episode.
But what we do get is a lovely kind of narrative framework. Because Dr. Keyworth is like, I want you to talk me through the attack from moment one. You're here because for the last 3 weeks, your behavior has been acknowledged and noted by your colleagues and friends. And basically, like, you have to sit here and talk to me if you want to keep your job. And then we get connection to like our kind of key plot storyline through this, which is everyone says the word pilot about 70,000 times. And it's like, what about the pilot? It all started with the pilot. Tell me about the pilot. I don't know. I don't want to talk about the pilot. The thing with the pilot is it wasn't about the pilot. When we talked about the pilot, it wasn't about the pilot. Talk about the pilot, Josh. This goes on for 3 minutes.
Goes on for some time.
And with that, we travel into the past.
On a journey.
So we're going full celestial navigation, Leigh.
We are in a big way.
Which I'm a big fan of, actually. So Josh is our anchor point, him and Dr. Keyworth. And then we're going to be flashing back over the last 3 weeks of like, what's happened? Like, Josh, what crazy shit have you been up to? Obviously, you know, influenced by the trauma that he has.
And I do think that's what's like separating us from like a soapier moment, which I'm not against. But I feel like the fact that we are coming back to like, I want to make a stage combat reference, but in stage combat, you always have to carry the injury. You can't just miraculously get like hit with a broadsword and then forget where you were hit. And I feel like what moves us out of a soapy place is the fact that Josh is carrying the injury of this emotional trauma and we're not just like forgetting it happened.
Yeah. So we travel back 3 weeks. We're in the sort of halls of the West Wing and Toby is discussing a brass quintet that are playing with Josh.
It was aggressive. The brass quintet really, and I think there's something with the sound levels that I was supposed to feel this way, but I was like, wow, maybe I don't like brass music. This is so aggressive.
But also I was obsessed with how Toby and Josh stood directly in front of the musicians and discussed whether or not they thought it was a good idea that they were playing. But like not to the musicians, just to each other. And the shock and surprise that Toby was last year accused and called names for not bringing the proper Christmas spirit to the White House.
I mean, to be fair to him, he is a Jew.
Well, that's what I was saying. I was like, in my head, I'm like, I feel like it's not necessarily his holiday. So like, he doesn't have to give any more than he wants to.
I just don't know that we should be expecting people who are not Christian and therefore do not celebrate Christmas to bring like, the festive spirit. Also, if we recall last Christmas, he was very deeply traumatized by a homeless man dying wearing his coat. Of course he wasn't bringing the Christmas spirit.
Yeah, Toby is a grumpy man and I don't wish people to expect any more from him than that.
I love him for his grumpiness.
Let's go to a press briefing. Classic CJ and the press corps. Someone's like, hey, CJ, do you want to comment on what happened on a tour of the White House the other day? And CJ's like, what? And they were like, do you know about the woman going crazy? And Leigh, it's giving me green beans.
Yeah.
It's giving me, this is a bigger storyline. I do not like the energy of going crazy.
Yeah. Especially the reference to like, oh, that happens once a week, you know?
Yeah. But what I did enjoy was CJ being like, oh, was it because she saw that painting of Dolly Madison? Which I think is funny.
Love the name check for Dolly Madison. Dolly Mads, if you will. The original Flirtious.
She didn't portray well. You know, strong-featured woman. Right. Let's go to the Situation Room and find out what's going on with the pilot. So suspense music from the off, which makes me feel scared. And news that the pilot that Josh was saying in no way emotionally moved him or affected him is AWOL from like a flight practice. Mm-hmm. I'm not in the military. As basically on AWOL in a very expensive fighter plane. So all the team in the sit room are like, what are we going to do about this? We're trying to get in contact with him. We're trying to get visuals of him from some other planes. And obviously we'll try to encourage the pilot to bring the plane down. Mm-hmm. Jed's like, cool, keep me in the loop. What I ask, Leigh, is where is Fitzwallace? Where's Fitzy?
I wanted Fitzy's take on what was going on. I wanted his grounding presence.
Yeah. We then flash forward to Christmas Eve again to Stanley and Josh. Mm-hmm. And Josh, again, just like refusing to open up about why the pilot affected him so much, which is stressing me out. And then he says, I'm sorry if this question sounds rude, but how long will we be here today?
It's peacocking. There's a lot of peacocking happening. He's like showing his full range of feathers.
Yeah. I love that Stanley's reply is, I'm sorry if this answer sounds rude, but as long as I want. Frankly, icon behavior.
So good.
Then there's a knock at the door. Josh like jumps out of his skin. And we then cut to a flashback of him like staring at his bloodied hand.
It was such a jarring flashback because it was so quick.
Yeah. And I think then we're like back in the room.
I think this is where I started being like very deeply unwell based on this episode. Because it was just so visceral. It really did feel like a trauma flashback in the way that it was just like so visual and short, sharp and quick.
And yeah, so then we're like back in the room and Stanley's like, Josh, it was just the coffee arriving. Like, and you can see Stanley like clocking him. Very dark, very dark. But let's flash back again to meet Mr. Leo McGarry walking through the halls of the West Wing, just eating some nuts and having a coffee.
Love him munching on some nuts as he walks and talks out of the sit room.
Yeah. And then he's talking about the pilot thing with Josh. And I'm like, oh, there's a reason why Leo's kind of like all over this, because I always forget that Leo used to be a pilot.
Because he, in the previous pilot storyline, was like, don't you talk about blah, 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 blah.
Like, I know, I've been in those planes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plot twist, Leo McGarry is actually Ben Affleck in Pearl Harbor.
Get me to a goddamn plane. Anyway, Leo gives Josh the task of being like, can you look into the pilot's backstory, like his personal life, and find out if there's like anything that we've missed in our vetting, basically.
As to why he's gone AWOL.
Donna immediately like materializes from thin air and provides Josh with like a pamphlet of information about this pilot. Like, I can't express how lost Josh would be without her.
It must be his like military personal file.
Yes, that would be it. She then says, you're a very handsome man. You're a very powerful and very handsome man. And Josh is immediately like, what do you want? But what does she want?
She wants to see Yo-Yo Ma.
Classic flautist behavior, being like, I've got to see the cellist.
I will say, though, this walk and talk with Josh and Donna, it does not have, I think they've done, again, Bradley Whitford has done like a gorgeous job of being like, it's still the beats of their usual interactions, but his energy is just colder towards her. There's something like off about it.
There's a disconnect. And also, I feel like normally like the Donna and Josh walk and talks are very like both looking forward and like chatting away. And the thing that's interesting is that in these shots, Donna is looking at Josh and Josh is looking forward.
Which is such a like anxious response, I think, when you know that somebody you love isn't doing well, that you're trying to check their facial reactions all the time and like lock in with eye contact with them.
Yeah. So Josh opens the personnel file of the pilot and finds out that he and the pilot have the same birthday. Cue Josh obviously having a massive crisis of mortality.
Just full existential dread.
Yeah, like a big time. And I know that Josh did nearly die in the shooting. And so very fair for him to be stressed. But men are terrified of dying.
So terrified.
Their own mortality really hits them in a very specific way, especially when they're in their 40s. Anyway, to CJ. And just a little, Leigh and I just ringing our little bell that there's a new EA in this scene.
In a little pinstripe number, which I really enjoyed.
With like a chunky red knitted turtleneck too. She literally hands over some forms, but you know, we see her. We see the work she's doing. And another new character alert, Leigh, because we are going to meet Bernard.
I'm immediately, and we know that CJ is calling him Bernard, but he's Bernard, isn't he? That's who he truly is. Yeah. He's Bernard.
But I prefer Bernard.
I'm immediately obsessed with Bernard.
I'm immediately stressed by the English accent, obviously. I'm going to be Bernard, Leigh, and we're going to read out this little interaction here. Claudia Jean. Okay, let's go. Claudia Jean.
How are you doing, Bernard?
Not at all well.
It's like something from the 40s. Like
I'm going to start saying that. When people are like, how are you? I'm going to be like, not at all well. That's such a good comeback to that.
Often true.
Yeah. I love that he's just like, no, I'm not happy. Like, I've got issues.
And I guess he's part of the like hospitality team at the White House.
I believe so. It kind of feels that he is one of the people who is touring people around the White House. He's guiding people. He has a lot of trivia. He knows a lot about all the art on the walls.
I imagine works for a department called something like Visitor Experience.
It's got experience in it at some point.
Yeah.
Every word from this character's mouth is incredible.
At one point he says, CJ, your necklace is a monument to bourgeois taste.
I love him. He's also like, oh, the painting that the woman had this like crazy episode in front of was like a really like shit painting that we've got from the Musée d'Orsay in France that like Jed Bartlett saw and was like, I like that. And then he just reads Jed's taste in art for filth.
What he says, I believe, is the president has even worse taste in art than you do in accessories.
That is exactly what he says, yes. What he also says is that the woman had some sort of episode where she was talking in a language that no one could understand.
This was not great, especially given what is revealed later.
So we're going to put a pin in that as a concept. He then refers to that painting, like where it is, and he's like, here it hangs like a gym sock on a shower rod.
Excellent.
Like, why? It's so extra. Speaking of extra, let's touch base with Jed and Charlie. There is a lot in this episode of just like Jed moving places and monologuing at Charlie.
Yeah.
Which I love. So like, yeah, I'm not quite sure what the context was, but like Jed was like, oh, I did this thing when I was a kid and then my dad locked me in the garage till Easter.
Just a casual reference to child abuse from Jed.
It's such boomer energy, isn't it? To be like, oh, well, when I was a child, we were whipped. And we just got on with it. And you're like, okay, but like maybe that shouldn't have happened to you. Are you okay?
Yeah, it's intense for sure.
I'm just going to have a moment of conjecture for the fact that the decorations in the White House are insane, but just like so on point. It's the perfect, like in my head, it's the
Miracle at 34th Street.
Yeah. It's that era of Christmas.
And that's the Christmas that I wish to have every year.
Yes. I don't wish to have a child, but if I was to have a child, I would want it to be
Mara. What's her name?
Child Mara Wilson.
Yeah.
And I would want to wear everything that her mum in that film wears, and I want my apartment to be like her apartment.
Yeah, beautiful, stunning.
The interior design of that film is truly amazing. Also, just the idea that at the end of the film, because she did such a good job on the Thanksgiving parade, they gave her a house is crazy.
Crazy, but like that is the world in which I would wish to live.
I'd love to live, yeah. Anyway, conjecture over. Charlie's like, Mr. President, you need to decide which Christmas cards you're signing. Jed's like, I shall sign all my Christmas cards, for I am the president and I am for the people. How many Christmas cards are there to sign, Charlie? And Charlie's like, over 1 million.
I'm enjoying Charlie's kind of sparky vibes at the moment. It's lovely to see him
really
doing
singing.
well.
He's really singing with Jed at the moment. And I think it's all that Charlie needs to like keep himself employed in this job, because honestly, it must drive him to like his wit's end. We're going to jump back to the present and find out that the pilot died.
Yeah.
That went AWOL. And Josh and Stanley very briefly have a back and forth about how Josh is in no way upset by that at all, and it hasn't affected him in any way. And Stanley's like, I feel like it has, and I feel like maybe you should talk about it. And Josh's like, I really like couldn't care less.
I'm a very busy man. I'm very important.
But Leigh, what happened was, again, very heavy. So the pilot flew the plane into a mountain.
Yeah.
And they did get radio comms with him before this happened. And all the pilot said over radio is like, it wasn't the plane.
Yeah.
So he wanted to make it clear that he wasn't like, he hadn't lost control of the plane. It was about him.
Yeah.
While we're finding out about this, Josh is looking through like personal family photos of the pilot from his personnel file. And he finds out also that the pilot had the Purple Heart because he got shot at and injured when he was serving in Bosnia.
Yeah.
So they have the same birthday and they are both victims of gunshot wounds. Mm-hmm. But Josh would just like it to be clear that this in no way makes him think about the pilot. He's not got any feelings about the pilot. In fact, the pilot means nothing to him. Mm-hmm. Let's continue.
Because he's a very professional, very serious, very professional, very unemotional man.
Yeah, like he's got so much to do, Leigh. He's so busy. Bagpipes.
We move directly from kind of a deeply tragic and horrifying story into the most aggressive bagpipe music.
I don't think there's any bagpipe music that isn't aggressive.
Yeah,
Discuss.
also like having spent too many summers at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, what I will say is bagpipes sound loud when you are like over the road and up the hill from them. It's still kind of like really searing through the cortex. I can't imagine experiencing bagpipes indoors in an echoey space.
Yeah, awful. Truly awful. And again, we'll come back to this later in the episode. But when I was watching it, I was like, wow, all the music is so aggressive.
Yeah.
Genius move of writing later on, which we will dig into. Toby, I was like, Toby can't be a fan of bagpipes. Quote from Toby Ziegler. There are 3 guys from Delaware, but they sure can play. What? What's happening? Toby's a fan of bagpipes? And then he's like, oh, the money they're collecting is to like help marching bands. And I was like, I honestly think there are members of this writer's room on this show who have a vested interest in marching bands. There's a lot of band-based talk. Like everyone had played an instrument.
That is so
being like,
true.
I was in band. There's got to be some sort of like hardcore, like all of us were in band. So like, let's big up marching bands.
I do feel like, because I feel like it's the really high achieving kids that are in marching band. So I imagine that there is more than an average crossover between staffers in the West Wing and those who were in marching band in high school.
I would love that. I would love someone to do a poll on that. Now, we're going to get deep again because so this bagpipe music is like echoing around. Toby and Josh are trying to have this conversation. Josh is getting very het up and he's like, oh, I can just hear sirens all over the building. And then he's like, the music, I meant the music. And the way Toby looks at Josh and just
Toby's
really
physical energy just immediately shifts.
And he just says so softly, Josh.
Mm-hmm.
And like looks at him. My heart fell to the floor. And you're like, okay, cool. So we're logging that. Like Toby's keyed in.
I'm unfortunately unable to emotionally handle grumpy men showing platonic love for their male friends.
Yeah. It's soft voicing a male friend, I think, for me. A very quick nod back to the fact that the quote unquote crazy woman story is still in circulation at this point.
It's still happening.
Oh, there's also an oil-based storyline that I really don't care about.
Let's move on. Yeah.
CJ's talking to Toby about it, which is why we get a view of CJ's frankly bomb outfit.
Yeah, it's like a red roll neck with a black skirt suit, a knockout, a bombshell.
Yeah, she looks phenom. But they both witnessed Josh being very erratic. He like comes out of his office and is like it's like a goddamn hockey game out here, and then like slams his door, and like shared eye contact between friends where they have a entirely non-verbal conversation.
Yeah.
Is so powerful.
Yeah.
But we're going to roll forward to the present, back to Stanley and Josh, with like Josh is sat with his coffee mug in front of him and he's like twisting this teaspoon in his hands.
He's got his like thumb pressed into the spoon, and there's something so specific about it that I honestly found this episode quite difficult to watch. And I think it's because he is like a coiled spring. Bradley Whitford is like a coiled spring through this whole episode. And I feel like as someone who has several people in my life who've, struggled with addiction or have struggled with PTSD, it is so real. His performance is so true to life.
Yeah, it's very well researched, I think, and very well written. His behavior is like, I think I found his behavior very triggering. It was a tough watch, but I was also like, I do feel like we're dealing with this subject with real weight and gravity.
It feels really grounded. I think that's the thing. It at no point feels like I'm acting PTSD. It feels really specific.
For sure. Unsurprisingly, this was one of the episodes that was put forward when Bradley Whitford was like nominated for an Emmy for Outstanding Supporting Actor. So like, and he did win. He won. He won the Emmy that year for Outstanding Supporting Actor, which, on this episode alone, he deserved. It's unbelievable. He says to Dr. Keyworth, this is incredibly prosecutorial. And this is coming from a man who has previously described himself as being a professional hostile witness.
Yeah, it's the thing is he's trying to play this therapy session like a poker game, isn't he?
Yeah, it's so interesting. It's like, it's very, very dramatically exciting to have someone who is so good at twisting people's words, so good at like coming back with a zinger and like changing the subject and like throwing people off and spinning situations, to put him in a scene with a therapist where the therapist is his intellectual equal and
but
who
has
can
a
see
very
every
different
move.
Kind of intelligence.
Yes. Who's just still and listens and responds very calmly and concisely. I was so riveted watching all of the scenes between the two of those actors.
I'm going to say something incredibly bourgeois now in honor of CJ's necklace and accessories. Every scene between Josh and Dr. Keyworth is like watching a tango. It's like watching but like Paso Doble on Strictly.
Yeah, because it feels like a fight, but they're also like, there's a rhythm.
Yeah. I hate myself.
Let's roll back to the past again. We're following Josh once more, and essentially he's just sort of going into rooms and shouting at people, and it's very worrying. He's really focused on this pilot, but he's also being really critical of everyone. And then two kind of weird things happen side by side, which is CJ has a photo of like a man holding a child in front of the painting that the woman was, quote unquote, going crazy in front of.
At this point, I am like, Where are we going with this?
Where are we going with this? Like, this feels like you'll put so much worthiness into it, but I know nothing. And then Donna just walks through a corridor and shouts, Yo-Yo Ma rules? Which is so much more the vibe I thought this app would have.
Yeah. And you know what's funny is like, it's so jarring, but then at the same time, I can completely also see it as like a thing of being like, I'm really stressed out because someone I'm really close to is clearly like spiraling down fast. So I'm going to overcompensate with like Yuletide joy and pretend it's not happening.
Because, we never gave any context for Yo-Yo Ma. So Donna, we've just been talking about Yo-Yo Ma. Donna has asked Josh if she could go to the congressional Christmas party because Yo-Yo Ma is going to play cello there. And she's like, I'm a huge fan of his work. Like, I've dreamed of seeing him live. And Josh was like, yeah, sure, you can come. So that's the context there. But what we're teeing up for with Josh is that he's going to go and shout at the President of the United States.
Yeah.
So Dr. Keyworth is like, what happened in the Oval Office? And Josh says, you're not going to understand it.
Such an asshole, but also you can just see him like scrambling for like a bit of status.
It's fascinating. And Dr. Keyworth just says, I'm a fairly well-educated guy, which I think is such good crossfire for that. Josh then says, you don't ever cross that line.
Oh boy, does he cross it.
Which makes me feel like Josh is going to cross that line in a big way.
As far as Josh is concerned, lines are made for crossing.
Yeah. The following scene that we watch in the Oval Office is one of the most uncomfortable scenes
it goes
I've watched on this show.
For so much longer than you expect it to. And you think it's over and then it keeps going.
So like Leo, Sam and Josh are in a meeting with Jed, and Leo and Sam want Jed to bring up a subject with a congressman or congresspeople at this party. And Josh is like, why are we having conversations at parties? Like, why don't we just do something? And then he just loses it.
Yeah.
And is just shouting at Jed Bartlett about like how he's not doing anything. Like, what do we even stand for? Like, okay, so we're going to go and have these meetings. Like, what does that mean?
I feel like I don't want to. I don't know that I can ever watch this episode again. But I almost feel like I could watch that scene 4 separate times to watch each individual actor through the scene.
I was going to mention that.
You could watch the whole scene and just watch Rob Lowe in the background and Rob Lowe, as if I know him, Rob Lowe reacting as if like, this is my best friend and he's blowing it and he's blowing it. And you can see Leo's kind of like...
Like he's fired. Like what's happening is like, that's the president. That's the president. That's the president. Also, I would just like honourable mention to Martin Sheen's performance.
Yes.
He's just looking at Josh. He's not listening to what Josh is saying. He's just watching Josh's behavior. And like you can see him taking it in, being like, huh, okay, Josh is very unwell. Also, you can see him being like, you don't talk to me like that.
Yeah.
But it's layered with this thing of being like, right, okay, well, an intervention needs to happen there. And like, he just looks at Leo and then Leo's just like, wait in my office. Leo's calm, direct nature in situations where his employees are in like a chaotic place makes me so tearful. Josh was like, I just want to say about like what I said back there. And Leo says, I'm not sure you were fully conscious when you said it.
So insightful.
Yeah. Because I think when you're on that knife edge and you're feeling that rage that's like trauma informed, you don't know what you're saying when those outbursts happen.
No.
Like he was out of his body at that point.
Yeah.
Like
out
Josh
of his
had
body
left
is
the room.
exactly the phrase. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so well done. Like we then go back to the psychologist and the actor who plays Stanley Keyworth is just so good. Like coming in for one episode.
And you have to you're coming in for one day, which is obviously going to be like, potentially intimidating because it's at this point, this huge hit of a show. Several people have like won Emmys already for this show. And you have to come in and be like the stag locking horns with Josh Lyman, who's like the biggest man in town,
Yeah. And I just think it's a phenomenal performance. And the writing is so good. Like, it's a gift of a character. Josh is really like sparring with him. He's like really not letting up. Like the wall is so firmly there. And Dr. Keyworth's like, I swear I am completely unimpressed with clever answers. What a line. Like what a line of script to write. Like that's a coffee break after you've written that.
Yeah,
That's you being like, I'm going to take 10.
I almost feel like I can't think about it too much because I then will spiral into, well, I'm never going to write anything that concise and that powerful. So I may as well give up.
May as well just never pick up a pen again. But at the end of this scene, what Dr. Keyworth is driving at is he's like, Josh, tell us about what happened to your hand. Because you keep saying you smashed a glass, but what happened? And at this point, I wrote in the shared doc, I was like, wait, did Josh smash the glass into his hand on purpose?
Yeah, I was really concerned. I was like, is this going to be like a self-harm
storyline where I thought it might be going?
Or I was like, is it actually going to be an even more kind of toxic to other people behavior? Do you know what I mean?
I smashed a glass because I wanted to fight you.
Yes, which is, I think, from a female perspective, very frightening. And I think I would struggle to stay on board with Josh as a character if that behavior had been born out of like an argument with Donna, which at this point in the episode, he feels like he's on his way to because he talks about her being annoying. Yeah.
And like winding him up about this Yo-Yo Ma thing. Speaking of which, let's go to the congressional Christmas party.
Please.
So Jed, a glimmer of lightness.
A brief moment of reprieve.
Is that Jed has enforced a white tie dress code.
May I just say, Charlie looks phenomenal.
Charlie looks so cute.
Are you aware that before the West Wing, Dule Hill's main thing was being a tap dancer?
Oh my God. What?
I can send you a compilation of Dule Hill tap dancing from like childhood on television.
Yes, obviously send me that. I think, can you tell I wasn't popular at school? I think tap dancing is one of the coolest things.
Yeah.
I think it's so cool. Wow. I hate myself. Send me those videos. That would be great. Charlie's like straightening his tie and he says to Jed, I didn't know people dress like this anymore. And Jed looks at him and like with all seriousness just says, I brought it back.
Which so
is
good.
Hilarious. I needed that cute moment between Charlie and Jed actually.
I really needed it.
And then and then once again, CJ and a gown.
I'm going to say something controversial. I'm going to say I prefer this to the blue Armani.
I think this is sexier than the blue Armani.
An off-the-shoulder red satin gown? Are you joking?
Are you kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me? She looks amazing. And do you know what's crazy, Leigh? Is that she looks bonkers hot and has the heaviest conversation with a stranger I've ever encountered.
I was not prepared for an emotional Auschwitz-based resolution to the artwork and Bernard storyline.
Honestly, the conclusion, the amount of times that someone used the phrase like woman going crazy.
Yeah.
For us to then relate this back to someone whose parent had died in Auschwitz was crazy for me. I was like, this doesn't feel like it's been handled very well.
It kind of felt like it could have been like the full Christmas episode
arc.
Because Josh doesn't necessarily need to have this moment. I think this moment is really important and really necessary. Doesn't necessarily need to have it in the Christmas episode.
At Christmas. Yeah. So CJ and Bernard are talking to this tiny little woman and her son. CJ's like, oh, like, ma'am, we invited you back to the White House because we heard that like you'd been taken unwell basically when you were here, and we just wanted to like apologize. And
she was escorted out by security.
Yeah. So the lady that CJ's talking to is the little girl from the photo that CJ had earlier. So the woman who was obviously having like a traumatic response to seeing this painting was the daughter of the painter or the art dealer?
I don't think either. Just he owned that painting. He bought that painting.
So that painting was like in her house when she was a child.
And it was confiscated from him.
By the Nazis, because they lived in France under Vichy rule. So it was taken away and then like sold, and they were then taken to labor camps and then obviously to one of the death camps. An awful, like a very heavy story that I think needed more screen time and more weight personally, because I also thought it was incredibly interesting piece of history about like stolen art, things that were taken from people and then sold on, and like now are worth huge amounts of money, but aren't with the people who originally owned them or their families.
First of all, I do understand that the full episode is about kind of trauma responses and different trauma responses. And I do think it is I think it's an interesting commentary and like an important conversation to be like, the one woman with the trauma response is being called crazy. Yeah. And that's not happening to either of the two men who are having a trauma response. Yeah. The pilot and Josh. Mm-hmm. But I do wonder, from almost a safeguarding perspective, would an episode of television be made now where all three main plots are based in trauma? I think all of the stories are done well, but it feels a little bit imbalanced. Just knowing that like we have very close friends who kind of work in safeguarding in the theatre world. And I think their perspective on this now would be, this is almost too much to throw at people in one go, potentially. Yeah, agreed. Storyline wise.
Yeah.
My other point was, I just wanted to give flowers to the actor playing her son, who was there kind of acting as her translator, because it was a teeny tiny part, but I really felt his love for his mother. And I completely believed, I'm sure they probably met that day to do that scene.
He was really good.
I was so invested in their like mother-son dynamic.
Yeah. What I would love to know is what language that character spoke. Because it could be French that she was speaking, or it could be Hebrew. But I would say both of those are languages that people would recognize if they heard them.
Yeah. I wonder if it's like a regional dialect or something.
Could be.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm going to round off this moment with some very, very lighthearted comments about Bernard. So CJ's having this very earnest conversation about the painting. And she was like, we contacted the French. And Bernard's like, who probably surrendered. I was like, Bernard, now is not the time.
Now is not the time to come for the French.
And then as they leave the interaction with the woman and her son, he just looks at CJ and goes, you're a freakishly tall woman.
CJ is like, oh, we've like connected, Bernard. Like we've had a moment of connection. Yeah. Like maybe we're friends now. And he just goes, you're a freakishly tall woman.
I beg of them, let him be a recurring character.
Please bring Bernard back. I beg of you.
I would say he's written very queer-coded.
Oh, as gay as the day is long, Fiona.
Yeah, like he's a bitchy old queen who loves art and is a massive snob, and I'm obsessed with him.
I think he low-key does some drag sometimes, you know?
Oh my God, yes. Like I would absolutely love that. Yeah. Stunning. Okay. So what's Josh's diagnosis from Dr. Stanley? PTSD, which tracks, I feel. But I'm thinking like in the year 2000, is this actually still something that feels like quite a new thing to be diagnosing people with if they've not like served during a war or like lived in a war zone?
Even then, we're still pre-Iraq war. And I feel like even the conversation about like veterans' mental health didn't really start happening until people were coming back from Iraq. In my memory, that's just like anecdotally in my head.
Yeah. It's really interesting because as soon as Stanley's like, yeah, no, within 5 minutes of meeting you, I diagnosed you.
Yeah.
from that moment onwards, and from the moment that post-traumatic stress disorder is mentioned, Josh's entire physical makeup changes. He's terrified.
He really feels he's going to lose his job.
He's like, that's it. Like, you can't have that and work for the president.
I'm going to be sent on gardening leave. Like, that's what you're here to tell me.
Like, to pack up my stuff. Like, don't come back after the Christmas break.
And then he says, I'm not trying to give you cocky answers. And
like his voice is trembling when he says it.
And he just, somehow Bradley Whitford in his performance has made himself just look like a little boy suddenly.
It's very good. And then the thing that Stanley's saying is he's like, you have to tell me what happened with your hand. You have to tell me. So you said you smashed a glass when you got home after the party. But what happened at the party, Josh? Like, you need to tell me, like, take me through these events where you were triggered. And then we go to the Christmas party and Yo-Yo Ma playing cello and Josh having like an episode, a flashback episode.
He's like, it's not like a tight close-up on him. He's like in a crowd watching Yo-Yo Ma. I feel like those types of scenes are like almost impossible to act in a grounded way without going into caricature. And I think the reason why I had such a like physical reaction to this episode was because him having that, you know, I suppose panic attack, something along those lines, felt so real.
And everyone being in different parts of the crowd and watching it happen to him. But it's like a very public space.
And so they can't get to him because it's a really formal occasion.
Like seated recital with like the best cellist in the world playing.
It's a genius setting to let that happen in. It wouldn't have the same stakes almost if this was happening like in the bullpen.
Yeah, exactly.
That would still be public, but there's something about it being like an elevated occasion.
Yeah. So we're like cutting between the memories of the Christmas party and then flashbacks from the shooting and then to Josh's apartment afterwards. And Josh keeps saying, I put my glass down too heavily and it smashed in my hand. I kept putting that's all that happened. But you're going back to this shot in his apartment where there's someone like banging on the door. He's like, his super is banging on the door being like, Mr. Lyman, are you okay? And then it's like, as he's trying to tell the lie over and over again, it breaks. And then you see the visual of him. It's not a glass that he breaks. He puts his hand through the window.
Yeah. And it's so important to me that happens while he's alone.
Yes. And the thing that Dr. Keyworth is saying is the reason why the pilot got to you, the reason why the pilot was such a trigger is that he was a man who had the same experience of you as you, that he shared your birthday and he was someone who committed suicide. And I need you to tell me whether you felt suicidal in that moment, Josh, because you're telling me that you smashed a glass, but you didn't. You did something that caused harm to yourself. So like, tell me about how that came to happen.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly moving and a really amazing piece of TV magic that there's two really great pieces of TV magic that happen from that, which are a friend of the pod, Christian, who sends us our amazing spoiler-free trivia reference, is that the sound of the breaking glass every time through the episode you see Josh breaking this whiskey glass, it doesn't quite match what noise a whiskey glass would make. And it's because it's the sound of the window pane breaking. So they never use the sound of the whiskey glass. It's always the sound of the window pane, but placed with the visual of the whiskey glass, which is really clever. And the other thing that Dr. Keyworth is talking about is he's like, the reason why the last 3 weeks have been so difficult and things have been ramping up is because of the music that's been going on at the West Wing, and that the music in the corridors, that the music at that party, the patterns of that and the rhythms of that are making your body think about the sirens that were filling the air when you were shot and when you were in and out of consciousness.
Yeah.
And when you were fighting for your life. So like, of course you had this panic attack, you had this trauma response because the sound of the cello being played was making you go back to that place. like his body was remembering, even though his brain couldn't take him there.
Which is just like a genius. It's a genius piece of writing, and a genius piece of writing combined with excellent sound design throughout the whole episode.
Really great. Like every department showing up in a big way on this episode.
Yeah.
Then once Josh has kind of had this admittal moment, Stanley's like, okay, cool. I think that's us done. And Josh is like, no, I want to do therapy with you. Like, I want to show you that I want to be better. Like, don't go. If you go, I have to like not have a job anymore. And Stanley's like, no, like, it's good. Like, have a great Christmas. You don't need me anymore. And walks out. And Josh leaves this office that they've been talking in. And who's in the foyer, Leigh?
Oh God, the minute I saw Leo, I was not okay.
Leo's just waiting.
He's
sat
just
in a chair.
got his newspaper.
It's Christmas Eve, Leigh. It's the evening of Christmas Eve. And we're like after work, like there's no one left in the West Wing really. And Leo's just sat waiting. And I started feeling very weepy then. And then Leo has a monologue that I think is probably one of the most emotive pieces of writing I've seen performed on this show, which I know I keep saying, but it just keeps one-upping itself all the time.
And it is, of course, I know we're not into the quickfires yet, but it is 100% my moment that made me proud to be an American in this episode.
Yeah. And it's just this like wonderful moment between like an older man and a younger man where he looks at Josh and he's like, I've been there. I've been in the hole. And like, that's okay. You're not the only one. And like and I'm here now. Leo McGarry is such a good person.
And such a good character.
And he says to Josh, as long as I've got a job, you've got a job. And you see the tension fall from Josh's shoulders.
Yeah.
That's all he needed, was like his greatest fear was like, who am I if I'm not here with you guys?
Yeah.
And that moment of reassurance was so moving. And then Donna arrives.
So Donna's also here and has also waited on her Christmas Eve. She's not gone back to Wisconsin.
Yeah. She's at work on Christmas Eve. And she's going to take her boss to the emergency room to get his hand properly seen to on Christmas Eve. And then as they're walking out of the White House, there's a choir singing. And like there's this moment of pause and Josh listens to the music and you can see him being like, am I going to go again? And you can see him like having that internal battle with panic. And then Donna be like, let's go.
Yeah.
And they like stride off. And then I sat and I had a really good cry.
There's a really subtle like shift in status between Josh and Donna, I felt, in this scene. Because he obviously spends all of his time explaining stuff to her. But we've seen a couple of times, Josh hasn't seen it, but we as the audience have seen a couple of times now where we see Donna, she's more emotionally intelligent than him. She gets emotions better than he does. And I feel like there is a subtle shift in status between them because I think this is the first time that Josh gets that Donna has a type of intelligence and a type of language that he doesn't have. And obviously she was, the one that told him about his dad we saw at the beginning of this season. And so then suddenly it's like, oh, Donna, it's not just that I've given Donna this job and this opportunity and she needs something from me. It's like, I also have something to learn from her, is what I saw in Bradley Whitford's performance. In Josh in that last scene.
Yeah. What an episode.
Wow.
That concludes my recap. I could talk about this all day from every single angle. I just think it was amazing. Merry Christmas. Shall we to the quick fires?
Yeah.
Best fashion, Leigh.
Oh my God, both of CJ's looks. Her gown and then also just the red polo with the black skirt suit.
I actually think mine could go to, at the end, Donna, when she's being just an incredible, kind human, is also wearing a gorgeous black and white houndstooth coat.
I did actually notice that as well. Yeah, it's gorgeous.
It was really nice. What could a British or Irish politician never get away with?
I feel like I don't have one for this episode.
No, because I don't want to be too dismissive of something.
Yeah.
I think for me, potentially, it was like quite publicly supporting an employee through a mental health crisis.
Yeah.
And being like, we're going to do this in-house and you're going to stay here, rather than being like, let's like cut this off quickly.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure. I don't want to be too dismissive.
Yeah.
How long until some of our bingo card big ticket items came up? I mean, men's mental health
For sure.
feels like a big one for us to be discussing in the year 2000.
Totally. Prince William didn't get on that train until like 5 years ago. I guess he was a child at this point, so.
That's very true. What was your best writerly moment, Leigh?
Everything Bernard says. From start to finish, every word that comes out of Bernard's mouth.
Every line of dialogue.
Yeah.
But I would love 1,000% an honourable mention to also all of the dialogue from Dr. Stanley Keyworth.
I'm not the paper boy either, Josh.
Man, I feel like a man.
Charlie walking in his white tie and being like, I didn't know people dress like this anymore. And then Jed Bartlett just being like, I brought it back. As if he's like, you're many things, Jed. You're not a fashion icon. I'm so sorry to say.
Do you know what I mean? Like, do you know what I mean? I think my favorite Man, I feel like a man moment was like very early doors. Josh Lyman being like, I'm the Deputy White House Chief of Staff. I oversee 1,100 White House employees. I answer directly to Leo McGarry and the President of the United States. Did you think you were talking to the paperboy?
It's so good. I actually love it. Like, I don't even...
It's very male.
It's kind of camp. Like, it's so...
Also, not enough people talking about paperboys anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Here's to the paperboys.
Including lovely Eli in The Holiday in his first job in Hollywood.
Yeah. Shout out to another Christmas movie. Leigh, what was the moment that made you proudest to be an American?
This guy's walking down the street when he falls in the hole. The walls are so steep he can't get out. A doctor passes by and the guy shouts up, hey, can you help me out? The doctor writes a prescription, throws it down in the hole and moves on. Then a priest comes along and the guy shouts, Father, I'm down in this hole. Can you help me out? And the priest writes out a prayer, throws it down in the hole and moves on. Then a friend walks by. Hey, Joe, it's me. Can you help me out? And the friend jumps in the hole. Our guy says, are you stupid? Now we're both down here. The friend says, yeah, I've been down here before and I know the way out. There's just something also like it's the sentiment of it, but it's also kind of the folksy way that Leo says it.
It's because it's not this like very beautiful, amazing.
It's not the way Jed would say it. It's not got like the kind of floral, poetic. It's like very straightforward.
It's because that is something that someone said to Leo during his recovery.
Yeah.
That he was like, or he read in a book during his recovery. And he was like, that is meaningful to me.
And I have committed it to memory, much in the way that you and I will simply quote both Lady Gaga and Rupi Kaur to each other in moments of crisis.
Yes. I think for me, the reason why it makes me proudest to be American is because it's someone being like, it's him sharing something that's been an anchor for him.
Yes, it is vulnerable on his side also, because he's saying, I can see how bad this is for you, and I've been there as well. We've come a long way from Josh trying to hug him and him being like, boy, did you read that wrong.
Yeah. Oh, I love them. What are you going to teach me about Leigh? Because this has been a crazy episode.
It's been a crazy episode. And I was like, we could go where people expect, which is, kind of, I suppose, mental health and politics. I didn't feel like anyone needed that this festive season. So what we are instead going to talk about is the history of White House Christmas decorations.
Thank you. Yes, please do continue. This is exactly, Leigh, this is exactly what I wanted you to talk about. Because this episode, the decorations are popping off.
Yeah.
And I kept wanting to write about it in the shared doc, and then I was like, this really isn't the vibe.
But it's giving the production value of the actual White House Christmas decorations, I feel.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, let's talk aesthetics. Let's talk flotuses. Let's get into it. Okay, so the this year's 2020, we're going to start in the present day and work our way back.
Please do.
Yeah, so this year's festive Christmas decorations, the theme is Season of Peace and Light.
Okay. Tell me more.
Brian Raffanelli of Raffanelli Events worked closely with Dr. Jill Biden and obviously the creative efforts of a talented team to bring Dr. Jill Biden's vision together for the White House 2024 holiday decor. It took a dedicated team of 300 volunteers working for a full week to decorate the inside and outside of the White House. This year, there are 83 Christmas trees in the White House.
That's a lot.
Approximately 9,810 feet of ribbon and over 28,125 ornaments and over 2,200 doves used this year to decorate the White House. Not live doves, I don't believe. Yeah. I think it's kind of a paper dove situation.
Or like an ornament dove.
Exactly, yes.
Thing.
Being a symbol of peace.
I do get it as a symbol of peace. I don't personally enjoy too much bird action on a Christmas tree.
I'm with you.
But that's Leigh, that's just personal taste, and I'm not coming for Dr. Jill.
No, of course.
Or was it Brian? I would that I could have a cup of tea with Brian.
Of Raffanelli Events, of course.
Yes.
You know you have to be like the most shit hot events person in the country in order to be working with Dr. Jill. There is also the traditional gingerbread White House, which includes...
Wow, do they make one every year?
They make one every year, yeah. Which is made out of 25 sheets of gingerbread, 10 sheets of sugar cookie dough, 65 pounds of pastelage.
That's like the white icing stuff, right?
I'm going to say yeah. 45 pounds of chocolate, 50 pounds of royal icing, and 10 pounds of gum paste. And it features a cheerful scene of ice skaters on the South Lawn.
That's very fun.
Oh, you can do like which I feel we should go to DC and do one year. You can do an official tour of the Christmas decorations.
I would really like that. Maybe not for 4 years.
Maybe, yeah, that is such an excellent point. I had blocked that out.
Because I feel like flotuses' tastes, obviously, historically, will all be quite different. And like...
Oh, we're going to get there. We're going to get there.
Okie dokie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okie dokie.
I'll send you some photos of Dr. Jill's creations this year with Brian. But in the East Colonnade, you are currently, if you were to be in the East Colonnade, you'd be surrounded by bells, symbolizing the peaceful sounds of the holiday season, like brass bells suspended from the ceiling.
Fun.
In a kind of arch. And there's also a 3-dimensional horse-drawn sleigh pulling a Christmas tree decorated with bells and lights.
Wow.
In the China room, now this will be triggering for you, so I do apologize. There is a kind of scene of food is love. So it is a room full of bread, from what I can gather.
Oh, no.
Not very celiac friendly. It's a baker's bench and artisanal breads. To remind guests of the peaceful, patient, and loving process of baking bread.
I think that's a stretch for me.
It feels quite random. It does, in all honesty, with peace and love, of course, to Jill, feels quite random.
Yeah.
Also, the main Christmas tree this year is actually surrounded by its own, like, carousel.
Oh.
Not a real one, but, like, it's kind of ensconced within...
Cool.
A carousel. It's very fun. But to take ourselves back of like, how did we kind of get to this insanity that is the present day White House Christmas decorations? The 14th president, Franklin Pierce, not one of the super famous ones, one-term president. He was the first to decorate an evergreen outside the White House lawn in 1853. President Benjamin Harrison was the first to bring a tree inside the White House in 1889 and had it lit with candles, which feels crazy.
That's what they used to do, though. It was like put real candles on Christmas trees, like famously flammable.
So flammable. It's literally a tree. It's wood. But it was Mammy Eisenhower who really kind of stepped up the presidential Christmas decorations in the 1950s. And in a quote from Vogue, like many American traditions, the very stylish ones at least, the White House Christmas decorations really began with Jackie Kennedy.
Okay, let's go, bitch.
Yeah. So Jackie Kennedy was the first one who's like, there's going to be a theme for the White House decorations every year.
Yeah, so there should be. And I do appreciate that from her. Yeah.
So, new things have been added by each FLOTUS as we've kind of gone along. So the themes are thanks to Jackie Kennedy. The gingerbread White House is thanks to Patricia Nixon, who is someone I never think about. In my head, I always think of Nixon as being a bachelor, which obviously he wasn't, but he just has single man energy. I never think about Pat.
That's so true. You always, often with more recent presidents, you think about them in their couple.
Yeah, but also with the Kennedys, I'm like, Nancy is not to be forgotten, you know? But specifically with Nixon, I just never think about Pat. Apologies to Pat. Now, also, to be fair to Pat, she instituted candlelight tours of the White House during the holidays for working class families who were unable to visit during daytime hours, which feels like a lovely thing to do.
That sounds really magical.
Hillary Clinton was the first to light a White House menorah for Hanukkah.
Okay.
And in 2021, Jill Biden actually had the first official White House menorah made. Because obviously, famously, in theory, we have separation of church and state. And yet this is all deeply kind of Christmas based.
Yeah, it's definitely Christmas decorations, not holiday decorations at this point, really, is it?
So, as I say, Jackie Kennedy was the first to kind of give us the theme. And the first theme was Nutcracker Suite, which has proven so popular it has been revived by other administrations, specifically Barbara Bush and Hillary Clinton.
I see that for both of them being on a bit of a Nutcracker vibe. The Nutcracker is just a really glorious aesthetic, though.
It is. What I will say, Rosalind Carter chose to go with a Victorian theme, which involved some truly terrifying porcelain dolls hanging from the main Christmas tree. Which I was less of a fan of.
Porcelain dolls and like marionette puppets. It's just not for me.
It's a no. For sure. Laura Bush had a super cute moment with All Creatures Great and Small, which included a papier-mâché and marzipan rendering of the presidential pets.
I enjoy that.
And I do also really enjoy many of Michelle Obama's. Unsurprisingly, I really enjoy several of Michelle Obama's themes. They're kind of more spiritual, I would say, than kind of like directly an aesthetic. But so in 2009, Michelle Obama had Reflect, Rejoice, Renew.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Which is what I feel we should all be doing in the festive season. And in 2011, she had Shine, Give, Share.
Shine, Give, Share. It's very say it, sorted.
It is. You know? It is. It's kind of more of a slogan. Now, obviously, this is a big moment in the spotlight for the First Lady every year. You know, their taste is very much kind of scrutinized because also the First Ladies famously are kind of looked to as style icons. And, you know, it's whether they kind of live up to that or not. I think it is a lot of pressure. Also, Sarah Fling, a historian at the White House Historical Association, says that a lot of First Ladies will also shape their decorations around the initiatives that they're trying to put forward. So like Nancy Reagan invited teens from substance abuse rehabilitation programs to create ornaments for her like Just Say No campaign. You know, it's a time when they're going to have the media. It's crazy. You can't imagine those social interactions, can you? But it is kind of a time where the spotlight is specifically on the First Lady in her own right. And so they can kind of put a spotlight on particular things that they want to highlight. Like Michelle Obama invited military families to contribute cards and ornaments when she was launching her Joining Forces initiative to support service members. Now, there is a very fun, festive anecdote from the Obama White House in that 2015, Michelle Obama had some snow people made. In 2015, Michelle Obama had 56 snow people made, one to represent each of the United States and territories. Now, these are kind of like, if you can imagine, they're like almost like white exercise ball type looking things out on the lawn with like obviously like snow people faces and like big smiles. President Obama was not a fan. He found them a little frightening. He's quoted as saying they're a little creepy. There's a whole kind of Chucky element to them. And when the White House staff learned of the president's feelings about the snow people, they actually moved one of the snowmen in to peek into the Oval Office.
That's funny. I've just looked up some images and I'm with Mr. Obama. These are terrifying.
Which brings us to Melania Trump's blood trees in 2018.
Okay.
Did you miss this, Fi?
No, I think I've just blocked it out of my head.
It was much memed. In the East Colonnade, she basically had like a lines of fake Christmas trees, but they were red. And they were compared to car wash brushes, juxtaposed with the iconic blood waves in Stephen King's The Shining.
Yes.
And they were also photoshopped with white bonnets in a reference to Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale.
Yes, I remember seeing visuals of this and being like, this shouldn't have gone as far as it did.
No.
Like, it should have been vetoed.
Yeah. Also, people kind of took issue with it because the area around Chernobyl in Ukraine, after the disaster, the site has been named the Red Forest because radioactivity turned all of the green pine trees to a red-brown color.
Okie dokie.
And like footage from that forest is still used as like a reminder of deadly nuclear risks, which I don't know about you, but doesn't quite to me say Merry Christmas.
Not entirely, no.
And also typically first ladies do like a kind of press event when they reveal the White House Christmas decorations for the year. And they kind of invite reporters and they invite White House staff to thank them for all their hard work. But Melania Trump decided that she wasn't going to do that. And instead, she kind of released like a very stage managed Christmas video where she like walked through these like vast empty White House halls all in black.
Yes, I remember watching them. They were unhinged. It looked like, she looked like the villain in a Bond film because there was the hallways where it's like pots of white sticks.
Yeah. No, this is the following year.
Oh my God.
They did it again in 2017. Had the icy white branches along the East Colonnade, which the New York Times referred to as if she was starring in an ad for an as yet released perfume, Dior Christmas. Bronson Van Wyck, a prominent New York party planner, was also quoted in the New York Times as saying, like a promo video for middle market condo buildings that are overcharged to buyers, if you can imagine a company like that. Also, in tapes played by CNN earlier that year, Melania Trump, and I apologize for my coarse language that's about to ensue, but it's not mine, it's Melania's. Melania Trump was recorded expressing her frustration at the criticism of the obviously horrific family separation policy that was happening at the time by saying, I'm working my ass off on this Christmas stuff. That, you know, who gives a fuck about the Christmas stuff and decorations, but I need to do it, right? And then I do it and I say that I'm working on Christmas and planning for Christmas. And they said, oh, what about the children that they are separated from? Give me a fucking break.
Okay.
Yeah.
I bet she felt regretful about that.
I hope she did.
Leaked to the press.
I hope she did. Stephanie Grisham, a spokeswoman for the First Lady, said secretly taping the First Lady and willfully breaking an NDA to publish a salacious book is a clear attempt at relevance. The timing of this continues to be suspect, as does this never-ending exercise in self-pity and narcissism. Because the person who had recorded the tape and leaked the tape to CNN was a former close friend of Melania Trump's. Yeah. There were false claims that the Obamas were erecting holiday trees in an effort to ban the word Christmas. That was simply not true.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Melania Trump is not the only one who's kind of met with controversy as a result of her Christmas decorations. In the second year of the Clinton presidency, the New York Times released a story saying the toll the past year took on Hillary Rodham Clinton was evident at today's unveiling of the White House Christmas decorations. Last year, the Clintons first in the White House, Mrs. Clinton was full of optimism over her healthcare bill and her spirits were high. She bantered with reporters and photographers and commented on how difficult the transition to Washington had been for Socks, the family cat. This year... Fi is emotionally moved by Socks, the family cat.
It's a really good cat name.
This year, with her plans for healthcare only a tattered memory and the Republicans in control of Congress and hurling insults down Pennsylvania Avenue, she was subdued. Even Mrs. Clinton's Christmas outfit, a chenille tunic and skirt in dark forest green, was in contrast to last year when she wore Christmas red. And because Hillary Clinton had one of the lowest approval ratings of any modern first lady. And one of the ways after healthcare that they really tried to rehab Hillary Clinton's image with the public was by doing a Martha Stewart Christmas.
I was hoping we would get into this.
Yeah, Hillary and Martha did a lot together. Over the ensuing years with the various Clinton Christmas decorations, one of which in a kind of VT was introduced by Glenn Close.
That's so wild. Obviously, because we've mentioned Glenn Close, I must on my father-in-law's behalf just mention that he once met Glenn Close.
Of course, one of Murray's favourite anecdotes.
And we do hear about it regularly. But if you've met Glenn Close, you should drop the name.
You should be shouting about it, for sure. Yeah. And I will just close by saying, to give you all the gift of Christmas joy, this dark Christmas, there is a photo of Nancy Reagan unveiling the Christmas decorations with the actor Mr. T, who is dressed as Santa Claus, and she is sat upon his lap as though whispering in his ear what she would like for Christmas.
I've just seen it.
And it is both the funniest and the most disturbing image I've ever seen.
That is incredible. He's looking into the camera like, I don't know. Man.
I don't know that Mr. T was consenting, but
what I would
Nancy was having a great time.
I would like it to be known that Mr. T's Father Christmas outfit is, of course, sleeveless.
Naturally.
And I think that's important to note.
Thank you so much for that important context. You are so right. You are so right that I think I had not sufficiently brought that home for the listener. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think in conclusion, Jackie Kennedy obviously elevates Christmas in the White House from, I think, realistically, before Mammy Eisenhower and Jackie Kennedy in a kind of 1-2 punch. Before that, it was just kind of like your normal everyday American, let's decorate my home for Christmas. Whereas now it is something that the First Lady is working on for a big chunk of the year, which I really enjoy the idea of Abby Bartlett having to give her time to that.
I was going to say, that makes me love the production design even more on this episode, because the art department would have had a meeting where they were like, what would Abby Bartlett's Christmas decoration theme be?
Truly. And the answer is Miracle on 34th Street, which rings true. And it also makes me grieve afresh that we're never going to see Doug Emhoff's White House Christmas.
I know, yeah.
I really feel like he, as first gentleman, could have really given us something outstanding.
Or at least his story of the experience would have been very interesting.
I think he would have brought a fresh energy.
Yeah.
Something new, a new point of view, if you will, aesthetically. Also, he is Jewish, so, he might have brought in some fun other Jewish traditions in addition to the menorah. I just feel there could have been so much fun to be had. And I don't know that I needed to see like Bill Clinton's Christmas in the White House, but I do feel like I needed to see Doug's.
So the thing for me is the individual invested.
Yeah.
And Bill is saying, in my head, I don't know Bill personally, obviously, but like, I feel like Bill's like, I'm not really that interested in Christmas decorations. There's other things I'm more interested in. Whereas I feel like Doug's like, I'm not necessarily like a Christmas decorations guy, but like, I'm going to get into this.
If you give me a project, I'm going to commit.
It's that's what I'm going for.
And
it's
I'm going to put my stamp on it because I'm not going to do anything that I don't stand by as a man.
For sure. What a weird Christmas episode. I feel like now even more thankful for the Thanksgiving episode and CJ and the turkeys, because now knowing that this was down the line, I needed to lean in a big way to the Thanksgiving episode.
And I want to be very clear. The artistry all round.
Oh, yeah.
Genius on many levels.
I think when we do like our season 2 like town hall meeting and we're going through like best episodes, like this is up there for me.
I also heard Aaron Sorkin being quoted that this episode, if he was to like only to show a couple of episodes of The West Wing to someone to be like, this is the thing that I made. This is one of the episodes that he would show. That's so
interesting. Yeah.
Which for me, I was so surprised because I was like, this feels like a real outlier for me from the rest of the show. Because
it feels quite different in terms of how the storytelling is done. Like it's not what they do every week.
It feels so contained, I think. You know?
Yeah, like it could be a little standalone film.
But I think I'm very excited by the character development for all of the relationships.
Yeah.
That Josh going through this has given us in this episode. I'm very excited to see, therefore, like what's coming down the line for the rest of season 2, because I feel like we've just delved so much deeper in all of those relationships in one episode.
Yeah, because we're essentially at a mid-season point now.
Yeah.
Like we're getting to that mid-season point. And so for me, I'm like, yeah, this does feel like a point of no return for everyone in the cast. Is like, something has changed that means from now on we're all behaving differently, and that
something has changed within Josh.
Great. Yeah, well then with that in mind, Leigh, I would love for us to meet up next week and do this again.
Let's do it.
Well, until then, folks, I guess as always, we have been the Queer Gals watching The West Wing, and you can get in touch with us on all the socials.
Stay hydrated during the festive season, guys. It can be a boozy time.
Just Leigh, massively admitting she's got a huge hangover there. We are at Queer Gals Watch. You can also hit us up on our Gmail, Leigh.
Yes, queergalswatch@gmail.com.
We love hearing from you guys. And also maybe just like, it's a festive period. Maybe pop over onto Patreon and just have a little look through what you could get yourself as a personal Christmas present.
Or you can actually gift a Patreon membership if you should feel so moved.
What a great Christmas gift, ideally.
Yeah. Also, you know, obviously we absolutely love doing this podcast. It makes us so happy doing it. It is also a lot of work. So we really appreciate our patrons for helping us be able to do this.
Yeah, we're very grateful to you, and to you, Leigh, and to everyone listening. Happy holidays.
And to all, a good night.